We'll stay with ANC matters because the party's Secretary-General, Fikile Mbalula's bombshell on the Nkandla saga has caused an uproar within the party, overshadowing the ANC's 112th anniversary celebrations, and Mbalula admitting that the ANC lied to protect its former president, Jacob Zuma, in upgrading his Nkandla homestead. This has sparked outrage from the former police minister, Nathi Nhleko, who was at the forefront of the multi-million rand security upgrades at Zuma's homestead. Refuting Mbalula's claims, in a leaked audio recording, Nhleko denies that he was instructed to lie about Nkandla's quote-unquote firepool, describing Mbalula as the worst ANC Secretary-General in the party's history. Well, we have the pleasure now of being joined by the former police minister, Nathi Nhleko, who speaks to us on the phone. Mr. Nhleko, good morning to you, and thank you very much for your time. I want to kick off the conversation by taking you back to what you said in the Fifth Parliament, in what you described at that time, sitting alongside Tulas Nxesi, whom we remember very well. You referred to a swimming pool as a fire pool. Do you maintain that description?
Good morning. Good morning, sir. I hope you're well.
Wonderful, thank you, sir.
And as well as your viewers. Look, let me start here first. The assertions have been made that the ANC made a determination that a swimming pool is a fire pool. And the Minister of Police then made a determination that a swimming pool is a fire pool. Now, both these two structures that have been referred to, the ANC has no competency to make such a determination. Nor does the Minister of Police have a competency to make a determination about any pool of water, for an example. Now, the work undertaken at the time was about the security features, as you would know, and I think there were 4 issues that were outstanding, identified by Parliament through its ad hoc committee. Yeah. That was before the 2014 elections. So when I came in, there was already this kind of report and this kind of instruction by Parliament that a Minister of Police needed to make a determination around those 4 areas, one of which was the question of the fire pool.
Yeah.
Now, how does the issue of the fire pool arise? The fire pool does not come with me as a Minister of Police then, nor does it come with anybody else except the group of engineers. I think they were led by an engineer called Oberholzer, who, in assessing the potential emergency situations around the homestead, they made an analysis and said the water availability within the homestead was a problem. It wasn't sufficient. And I think he then said in his report that actually something like 210 or 212 kiloliters of water was needed, and that's an extra capacity. He then says, for that circumstance and for that area, you need an open water source. And that's where the issue of the fire pool comes in. He defines an open water source as a fire pool in his report, as a reliable source for emergencies. And by the way, if I may add just very briefly, you know the major airports around this country in South Africa, like OR, and I think also the Saga airport and so forth, they do not have these hydrants, the ordinary sort of fire hydrants as you find them.
Yeah.
They have these pools, the open water source located within the airports.
Mr.
So in case you have a flight that catches fire and so forth, it's quicker to then respond and so forth. So That was the notion, and that was the thinking.
I'm sorry to cut in the interest of time, but also not to belabor the point. I just want to know from you, and of course, I'm sure South Africans will be keen to know this. So you are talking to us about a Mr. Obelhoza, who was an engineer, who came to this determination and this description, therefore, of the swimming pool being a fire pool. Who was this person? You describe him as an engineer. Where did he come from? Was he part of some organization?
No, look, for the renovations that were taking place there, the security upgrades and so forth, you had different project teams. So it was part of they were part of the project teams on the ground that was dealing with the issue of the security upgrades and so forth. And there was a steering committee that also dealt with how that was needed to unfold and so on.
Okay.
So so
all right.
that's how we came into the picture.
Okay.
I've never seen him. I don't know him, and so on. But that was the report that was there.
And I suppose you wouldn't be able to remember from which project team he belonged to among the many project teams that would have worked on Nkandla.
No, look, I wouldn't distinctly somewhat remember. Safe to say that you also had a team of consulting engineers that were there on the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move along then. The Secretary-General of the ANC, Mr. Mbalula, is adamant that the description of a swimming pool, a leisurely swimming pool, being described as a fire pool, was purposefully designed to lie to members of parliament in order to defend former President Jacob Zuma. Do you go along with his statement?
That's absolutely not true. That's simply not true. I mean, I've raised this issue. I mean, if he says that the ANC lied to Parliament, there are two issues that arise out of that, and maybe even three for that matter. The first one is, surely there must have been somebody who must have given me an instruction to lie on behalf of the ANC. If not somebody, it must be a structure somewhere. So who took that decision in the ANC to instruct me that I needed to lie and tell a lie to Parliament and the South African public? Now, so he needs to then present to us, when I'm saying to us, I mean the South African public, who did that.
Yeah.
Now, that's the one part. But there are two serious issues that arise out of this thing. The first one being the question of the constitutional obligations that we have as ANC members of Parliament, as well as the oath of public office. So it's a very serious assertion to then suggest that either myself as an individual lied on behalf of the ANC, or the ANC as a collective and individual members of the ANC public representatives must have lied to Parliament about this thing. I don't know why he said these kind of things. I mean, it really damages the image and the standing of the African National Congress. I don't know how he came to these sort of things. I've already said that the ANC does not possess any or one thread of competency to make a determination about any pool of water.
Yeah.
Whether it's a fire pool or a swimming pool, it doesn't. I mean, that's work done by professionals, engineers, and so on.
So let me then try and perhaps reason, and I don't purport for a second to speak for Mr. Mbalula, but I'm going to speak based on what he said on Sunday, and that was that the manner in which he builds up to this story is that he comes across as a person who suggests that a story was cooked up. And he, in trying to build up the story, he even goes into detail talking about how sweating profusely you were in trying to defend, to use his words, ubuxoki. And he then says, you know, when you're trying to defend a lie, you obviously will sweat. Do you know, sitting here today, and can you, open up to us as to whether or not a story indeed was cooked up and sent to Parliament in order to mislead that House in describing some of these security features, i.e. fire pools?
I'm laughing because, this issue about sweating and so on, I mean, I did not know that the Secretary-General of the ANC is now a psychoanalyst of sorts. And I wouldn't want to respond to that. But it's a terrible suggestion to suggest that because I was sweating, I must have been lying. And in fact, that's what he said in the video clip that has been making rounds in the country, that I was sweating because I was telling a lie. I mean, there was no lie that I was telling. It's a different story as to why I was sweating and whatever the case is and so forth. And I wouldn't want really to entertain that kind of rubbish. The fact of the matter is there was never a story cooked up. Remember, on regular basis, I was reporting to the deputy president, who's currently the president now, and he was chairing the political committee of the ANC. So on regular basis, I would basically go to that structure and update them about the work that was being undertaken and where we were with the kind of research and investigative work, as it were.
Yeah.
Now, if I were him, if I wanted to know anything about what happened around the issue of Nkandla and so forth, I would go to the president. And I find it amazing that he has the audacity to essentially not only just implicate the ANC, but also the president of the ANC badly in this kind of manner. And it shouldn't have happened. Because it's a straightforward kind of thing. I mean, the work that I did is also backed up by reports, by specialists, whether in the field of security or in the field of construction, in the field of engineering, in the field of culture and whatever, as it were.
Yeah.
Now, he doesn't have grounds to come to the conclusion that he has.
Let me come...
Because he doesn't have any scientific sort of proof and analysis of what this issue was all about.
Mr. Nhleko, in the interest of time, I'm really pressed now, so I'm going to ask you to try and be short. We're going to come to why you think Mr. Mbalula has decided to say what he said last week Sunday. But I was listening to him yesterday, and he is also very active on social media. He has gone to put up an article that was published on the 7th of March, 2019. This was a News 24 article with the headline captioning some of what was said by the then ANC caucus chief whip, Jackson Mthembu, who is late now, and the headline with the words, "Never and never again will the ANC caucus act unlawfully, like with Nkandla." So he's saying that if you think I'm lying, look back at what Jackson Mthembu said. And as he, in fact, backed up his statement for why he published this article, he says Jackson Mthembu is speaking from the grave. And so he's saying that, indeed, the ANC did lie to Parliament to mislead in order to protect former President Jacob Zuma. How do you respond to that?
No, that wasn't also true. I mean, if people have perceptions, people should not convert their perceptions into facts, whether it was Jackson Mthembu or any other person, alive or dead. No one should really think that they can, convert their perceptions and interpretation of a particular situation into facts. Facts shall always remain with people who have the facts. And we need to, all of us, the only thing that we can do, once the facts have been exposed, backed up by evidence, then we will need to study carefully what conclusions and how those conclusions have been arrived at. And that's my point, really, to then say, look, if you want to know about what really transpired, don't read a newspaper article, because a newspaper article will not be able to give you supporting documents, for an example. I've just referred to an engineer's report, and the lead engineer being Mr. Oberholzer, who was there at the time, and so forth. Now, yourself as Newsroom, you don't have that report, but I do. Parliament does have it, because I gave and surrendered those documents to Parliament. So if you want to do a thoroughgoing kind of study and you want to have knowledge about what transpired, all you need to do, consult the relevant documents before you speak.
Mr. Nhleko, I want to wrap up then this conversation. Yes. If you are a member of the ANC in good standing...
I am a member of the ANC in good standing, sir. Let me correct you there, not if.
Okay, all right, and I'm glad.
And, I'm also mobilizing you to vote ANC.
All right, thank you. Thank you for making that confirmation. Then right. it means then that you subscribe to the party's program of renewal, which includes building the party's image, or should we say rebuilding the party's image, which has been shattered over many scandals, including this very one. And I'm calling it a scandal specifically or purposefully because the Constitutional Court, if you remember back, it was in 2016, March 2016, it did come out with a ruling on Nkandla to say that the president did not act in accordance with the Constitution, and to quote it directly, he was inconsistent with the Constitution and his actions were unlawful. And that is why, Mr. Nhleko, if I can remind you, that is why the former president was subsequently instructed to pay back 7 million rand. So you can't say that no wrongs were committed in the construction of Nkandla. Can you?
Look, I'm not even at that point. I'm at a point where Parliament said to me, conduct work to make a determination whether these particular items were security related. Now, there's no court that has made a determination to say that those particular items as identified by Parliament were not security related. So, whatever the matter was that was taken up to the Constitutional Court, it was probably something else. And that's why in my discussion with several people, including people, in fact, within the ANC structures, I've been saying, my report has never been taken to court. It has never been taken to the Constitutional Court or any other court for that matter. And I remember the threats that were being made. I think James Self of the DA, I mean, the first reaction on their side was when I presented this report, oh yeah, no, we're going to take this matter to court and whatever, and so forth. But they never did. And the reason why they never did, I'm very clear why. It's because everything that needed to have been done was done, and everything was also backed up by scientific evidence and evidential material in the form of documents that were there. So I understood, and I said to him in my response, I said, look, I'll be more than happy if this thing can be taken to court. I'll be more than happy, and I still maintain that point.
Mr. Nhleko, you and I are going to have to agree to disagree, because the very instruction for former President Jacob Zuma to pay back 7 million rand was part and parcel of the court processes that went on. So you can't say with a straight face that no court has ever instructed for monies to be paid back for what was termed by yourselves as security upgrades.
We are twisting this thing the other way around, Mr. Mngambi. I did not even say that. I said to you right now that my report, the work that I did, was never taken to court. And that you know very well. So something else that was taken to court, but not my report.
Fair enough.
So, and I'm not even reflecting on the issue of the payback, the 7 million and whatever and so forth. I'm not even talking about that. I'm saying on the basis of what has been said that we lied about, and which specifically confines itself to the report that I made. I'm very clear about that process. I'm very clear about the evidential material around that particular process, and I'm very clear about the fact that the ANC never lied.
Fair enough, Mr. Nhleko. It's fair enough, because I've got to say this, though, that this is part of the reason why Parliament was wrapped over the knuckles by the Constitutional Court for failing to hold the executive to account. That is perhaps where I should center this, in the criticism of your report. But let's then conclude the conversation. You have described Fikile Mbalula as the worst Secretary-General the ANC has ever had in many years. Why do you hold that view?
Look, and I don't want to delve really too much onto that thing. As I said to other comrades, that look, at some other point, I'm a person that really believes in thoroughgoing kind of work if you have got to conduct an assessment and so forth. But a Secretary-General of an organization such as the African National Congress has got, amongst other things, a duty to unite all of us. He has got, all of us, we must be able to relate to him or her as equally as our leader, for an example, regardless of how you and I, for instance, suppose we are a member of the ANC, you have a differing view or point with the views that I have, with for an example. But the two of us, we must comfortably and equally relate to a Secretary General and so on. So the first duty, basically, for me, is a question of uniting and marshalling, of course, the membership towards a common program and so on. So it's clear but then. Largely, it's also the question of upholding the image of the ANC, and I think that's the issue that you have also spoken to. Now, I find it hugely irresponsible that you would have a Secretary General who takes a public platform and bashes the image that he represents, that he should be upholding, and say, basically, the organization that he's leadership of lied about certain issues and certain processes and so forth. Yet, we are at a point when we need people like yourself, Mr. Mngambi, to vote for the ANC. So how do you vote for it when the leader of the very same party says to you that you can't trust us as the ANC because we are a bunch of liars and so forth? How do you do that?
What you're suggesting...
And that's where my fundamental problem also lies, with his articulations, as well in relation to his functions as Secretary General. Yeah.
Mr. Nhleko, I have to close now. I have to wrap up.
No, that's fine.
Please keep it very short if you can. What you are suggesting, though, is that Fikile Mbalula, by telling the people of South Africa what he clearly thinks are the truths of what went on in the background, but you are suggesting that he has become a liability for this party. Is that indeed a position you hold, that he has become a liability for the ANC?
No, but that's your interpretation. I said it's irresponsible to do so. It's hugely irresponsible.
What is your honest sense then? Why would you say the words that you said, that he's the worst Secretary General of the ANC?
Look, I've already responded to that, Mr. Mngambi. I've already responded to that because, as I'm saying now, I mean, look at you where you work as a news anchor and so on. You know, sitting there, you have a brand also to protect. You have a brand that you must say uphold and so on. Now, it's common sense, really.
Nathi Nhleko, let me thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Former police minister.
Forget to vote ANC, sir.
Former police minister who indeed is determined to campaign even on this platform, but speaking to us about the report he produced at the time. Well, you've heard his story as to where the firepool description came from.